Tasty Nuggets.
Nuggets.
Here we are once
Yummy.
again.
What's up, Andrew? Week off.
I know, week off, and we're back. I feel motivated to be back, making more stuff.
It's nice to podcast, right?
Yeah, it's good. This is where I belong. This is what I belong doing here.
This is what I do.
Yeah, this is what I do well. You know, everything else is pretty mediocre.
I can actually concur with that 100%.
Cool.
Not on you, but for myself.
Uh-huh.
I should have been more specific.
No, it was better that you weren't.
So, it's funny. We were kind of like freeballing some combo before.
I don't know if we were freeballing, but I hear what you're saying. I know what you mean. Freestyling.
Spitfiring.
They were spitballing, freestyling.
Okay.
Not freeballing.
Whatever, man.
I mean, I'm not freeballing. I'm not commando
Tasty
right
Nuggets.
now. Yeah, tasty nuggets for the world to see.
We were talking before, and I was like, what do we want to talk about? And it's funny because you like have a sore subject.
You're not well, I guess kind of a sore subject. I don't want tasty nuggets to turn into every other
rant?
aspect. Yeah, every other aspect of my life is just me complaining. So I don't want to come on here. It's education. It's to let people know where I'm coming from and to let people know how they should handle creatives in a situation where you're hiring them to do the work.
Right, and it's so funny because you were starting to tell the story, and then randomly I started to tell you a separate story about some podcast thing that we have going on here, and the two universes collided.
It's basically the same thing, and how to handle when a client hands you money to say, I want you to do something creative because I cannot. That's the bottom line is like, I want you to do something creative for me. I want you to make it look good and use all of your know-how and all of your experience, put it all together. I'm going to hand you some money to make something creative for me, with me, where you're doing the creative part and I'm talking about my expertise or whatever, or showcasing it. I'm going to hire you to do that and then basically tell you how to do your job, basically.
So I get it from both sides. It's a little different for me, for you, because I get paid to be creative, and I also get paid to take directions.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but it is frustrating.
Yeah.
I think when somebody hires you as a pro, and I run into this in so many different ways, actually. It's the more I think about the subject, the more I'm like, wow, I've got tons of things to share in this episode.
Yeah.
It's quite frustrating as a professional when you do something for a career. Okay.
Career.
To have somebody, I appreciate insight, and we talked about that before, right? You need insight, inspiration. You need direction from them to a degree of what are they trying to achieve? Mm-hmm. What is the product that at the end of the road that they're making? But then intervene throughout the course of the process that actually inhibits you from doing the product that they originally hired you to do.
Yeah, they have a very black and white, very zeros and ones, like very binary thing that they want done. And what you're supposed to do as a creative is to come in and put color on it and make it look good and take your years of experience and make it look the best way possible, because they don't know how to make things look good, you know?
Yep.
They don't wear tailored suits. They go to Men's Warehouse, buy off the rack. Okay. Like you come in here, you are the tailor. You are Giuseppe. You're the one that, immigrated from Italy as a little boy, learned the craft from your grandfather, beaten and died in the streets. You took that art from all those years, came over on a boat, sold everything you could, was a newsie, did all this work, grew your business, learned how to do this, came up in the world, make beautiful suits, and then you have somebody come in and be like, I'll just take it off the rack. And like that's not what it's about, basically.
I'm not laughing. I just think it was amazing that you came up with that many ad libs,
Giuseppe,
back to back about Giuseppe's history.
Well, that's what they need to like really think about it like that. Like all the years that you put into the bullshit that you have to learn, And what it comes down to is that the people that hire you, in most cases, don't have good taste. They don't have good taste Because if they had good taste, they would agree with you,
Yeah.
basically.
I agree with that. It's really quite complicated. I think even like, all right, so let's tie it to your creative work, right? So for me, one of the reasons why I look to not do that work myself is because I have this very vague vision of what I want. You know, I have like kind of a look in my head, but I don't really know the color scheme. I have like a shape in mind, but I don't know the layout. I don't really know as a professional, as not a professional, excuse me, as the client, what objects, fonts, layout, patterns, color scheme work best to elicit that mental response that you're looking for their end all consumer, right? And like, you know, like grocery stores and convenience store, like the big shops, they have this whole science, this whole psychology science of like where things need to be allocated and how big certain fonts need to be in order for you to visually stimulate you. So for me, looking to hire somebody like you, I'm going to say, you know, dude, I really want to make this print brochure. And, you know, I really don't know what I need it to be. I know that I want to increase my sales from it. I want it to establish me as an expert in my field. I think that's important. And I want it to look cool and modern and not dry or boring because, you know, most stuff just goes in the trash or whatever.
Yeah.
And I know that I want to incorporate my brand, and that's all I know.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to put that in your plate, and then you're going to come up with 5 different solutions, right?
Yeah.
5 different, let's say, models. And I'm going to be like, oh, I really like this one, but I kind of like some of the stuff in this one.
Yeah.
Can we build those together? And you could be like, yeah, absolutely. Or you could be like, no, and here's why.
Yeah.
And see, like, I'm open to that as the consumer because my level of expertise is in my own product, not what I'm asking you to do. Am I just essentially reiterating the Giuseppe story, but without the tailored suit part? You know?
Yeah. Well, no, that's kind of, you know, you kind of hit it. Like if more importantly, what you're hitting on is that if you're presenting somebody with something, you know, if somebody, you know, graphic designer, you know, videographer, whatever, comes to you and says, here are your options, and you go back to them and say, I don't like any of these, that is in I'd say 99% of the cases kind of on you as the client to be like, what, you don't know what you're talking about. Because if I present all of these ideas to you, there's got to be something in there that you could pull from.
So let me ask you this. The methodology behind the design portion of it, right? Is that concurrent with knowledge of what ties back to what I just said before about understanding how to, wow, I'm having like a brain freeze. Understanding how to present the aesthetics in order to produce the product that they want. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Number one thing is it's all like subjective. So like, when somebody, like say a graphic designer is putting something together, if you personally don't like it, and you have an idea in your head and you can't get that idea out, and I present something to you and you say I don't like it, and you say what don't you like about it, and they can't specifically tell you what they don't like about it, that's an issue on the client's end, because if I present something to you and I say here it is, it's not just me putting it together and you know, it's partly pulling it out of thin air, but it's also based on experience. So like the layout of everything is made, if you're good at what you do, it's made in a very specific way. The fonts that you choose is it based on the company's brand, or it's based on what, you know, trends are going on right now. I found recently when I was putting together a little social media design, whatever, that the client wanted it to look like everything else they saw that these other, say, real estate agents were using. And that's kind of bad, because real estate agents and the layout and the design of all that stuff is pretty regurgitated, and it's pretty boring.
Yeah, it's super redundant. I feel like there's only so many variables of media pieces that I've seen come out of any real estate agency that's not the same frigging thing.
Well, yeah, and there's ways of taking things that are modern and fresh and incorporating it, but it's going to be jarring because it's not going to look like all the other crap that you've seen out there. And it's like I'm taking all these things and putting them together to show you something that looks different than everything else. And if you're saying it doesn't look right because you're comparing it to these other agencies, well, what makes them right? Why are you looking at them and saying, I want it to look more like that? Don't you want it to kind of either look newer or stand out? Not to mention that the examples I was given, they were, months, if not like a year or so old. Like these other agencies, these other real estate agencies weren't updating stuff. They're not doing it on a regular basis.
Okay, so they were taking their competitors, doing some competitor research.
There's like, right? Oh, I like this.
Which is healthy. I get that,
Yeah, I get that.
But the competitors' data was dated already.
Well, the layout and the design they were using was just kind of generic and dated and
maybe
like nothing to it.
On Canva or something.
People use Canva now, and it's fine. Like there's actually templates in there that make things better. It's just that when you, as the client, come to a designer and say, I just basically what essentially happened was the client was just like, I'm going to do it myself. Can you post it? And when you look at the two, and I'm really on the fence if I should share the two, but if you look at the two, you could see which one looks, in my opinion, looks better. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of things that it comes down to, which is if you're the client, like you were saying before, we were talking about, just get all the information. Like what information, black and white, do you want to convey? That's one set that's one component of what the overall design is going to be. Then you take the branding of your company, what fonts you want to use, what colors you want to use, all that stuff. That's another component. And then you take that in between stuff, the creative part, you combine those two in an interesting way so that it looks eye-catching, it looks modern, and people want to click on it. And that's kind of how you have to look at it. Now, the issue came in for me, and this is like a big, let's just talk about fonts for a second. I could do a whole 50 minutes on just fonts alone.
I'm timing you.
Yeah. But don't ever use Papyrus as a font. If you're a yoga studio, don't ever use it. If you're a Bible study, don't use it. If you unless you're a Papyrus, manufacturer, maybe you could use Papyrus font, but please don't use Papyrus font. Times New Roman, don't use it.
I use it in my emails.
That's fine. Whatever. It's an email.
Or Helvetica.
Yeah, Helvetica is fine, but don't use Arial. Don't use Times New Roman. Don't use Comic Sans. Don't use Papyrus. Don't use Brush Script.
No wingdings.
I mean, wingdings it depends on how you use your wingdings. Wingdings might be fine. But those fonts, and the reason you shouldn't use them is because they're so generic, they're so old, they're so stock that they're not going to elicit any kind of wow factor.
Is there stock fonts outside? I know you can pay for fonts that you recommend that if you're going to try to put something together, obviously relative to the project.
Go on Google Web Fonts and pick fonts out of there. There's ways of sorting them by popularity. There's ways of sorting them by the top used ones. The rule, one rule that you could follow when you're doing this stuff too, is that in one brochure, on one page, and one design, you really want to use a sans serif, one type of sans serif font, like a Helvetica, Open Sans. If you want to be dirty and use Arial, I mean, it's gross, but whatever, you could use that. So you could use a sans serif font. Use one serif font that's like a Times New Roman. What are some other ones? There's Calibri. I'm trying to think of. They're the difference between a sans serif and a serif font is it just has little tiny pieces that stick off. A sans serif is just more linear. There's no fancy little pieces hanging off it. There's probably technical words that I'm not using. So you could use one sans serif font, one serif font, and then one modern brush. Handwriting kind of a font. If you combine those three different types of fonts in one thing, that's fine. don't use two different sans serif fonts on one design.
I did not know this. This is why I don't do this.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's and people are always like, well, you can do blah, blah, blah. Sure, go for it, knock yourself out. If it looks great, congratulations, you're like one of a billion people that have tried to do this and made it look good. Is it going to look good? No. Is what I'm telling you to do going to save you a lot of friggin' time and make it like simpler to make it look good? Yeah. So don't use more than one sans serif font. Don't use more than one serif font. Like yada yada yada. You get it. Don't use the stock font. Please don't use brush script. Don't use that on something. I mean, if you, there's just no, in this day and age, there's just zero reason to use these basic ass fonts, because what you're showing people subconsciously when they're looking at that, their brain is just dying a little inside. Their subconscious mind is just kind of shutting off a little and tuning it out, because it's so fatigued by seeing the same thing over and over again. It's not eye catching. It's not interesting in any kind of way. So that's just the font aspect of it, you know. So when I give somebody a design and I'm using like Montserrat or whatever, however you pronounce it, or some kind of cool font, even Open Sans, which is, you know, it's used a lot, but I still think it looks cool. If you're using a font like that and then I get it back and it has Arial and brush script, I'm just like, did you, you know, you made this in Publisher. I know you did, because I know you did. I could tell. I'm looking at it, how things are like moved around and stuff. But like, please, if you're doing that, it's just not going to look. It's just not going to look good. It's just not going to look good.
And so this client of yours essentially said, you know what, like, you gave them.
I gave them a design. It took me 5 to 10 minutes to put together, put it out there.
Because it's a simple piece of media. I saw what it was. It's very simple and it's not ornate. And they're like, hey, let me do this. Let me
on
take
a Friday. This is what kills me, is like, it's on a Friday. Hey, I want to put this up real. It's a congratulations, this listing sold and everyone's happy. Can you put this together and put this out on social media? Great. 5 minutes, boom, 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 put it together. It was something I was actually working on already, but it really didn't take me that long. Threw it to him. I don't know if I like it. Sends it back. I'm like, all right, tweak it. Sends to him. I don't know. Let me think about it. So this is something for social media that needs to go out just fast. Go out, put it out there, because everything's so fast now. You just throw it out there, make sure it looks good, move on to the next thing. So I'm driving home and they're like, "Hey, send me all the elements. Send me the picture, send me the text, send me all the elements." And I'm just like,
so you already know.
Yeah, I already know what they're gonna do. They're like, "I want to mess with it a little bit. I have time this weekend." I'm like, "All right." So if you want to do that, that's okay. Don't even ask me to do anything. Just go ahead and do that. What you're not considering or taking into mind when you're doing that is you needed it done fast and you needed it done to make it look good. You've already failed on those two accounts because it got done. It took 2 extra days to get it done. And it looked worse than when I had it. So if I made it and it didn't look good, it would still have been better. If I made it look like they did initially and put it out, it still would have been better to have a shitty design done on a Friday than posting it on a Saturday or a Sunday of Labor Day weekend. So like you already don't understand the design of it. And that's fine. You're not supposed to understand the design of it. You made the mistake by thinking you did and trying to do it. So, all right, it took you 2 extra days, let's say. You get it back to me. You want me to put it on social media. Now you don't understand design, and then you don't understand social media. Why am I going to put this post out on a Saturday, Labor Day weekend? But I did it because they wanted it done, and I'm just like, might as well put it out there. So those two things combined, the experience it takes to have the know-how to be able to know when to post it, know a good design. And then the other thing, which is interesting, which I think you could probably relate to with video perhaps, is the format, the dimensions of the post. It's going to show a certain way on say Facebook if you have the certain dimensions. Sometimes when you post stuff, you'll notice it gets cropped weird. You have like somebody's like chin and mouth, and you're like, why is this posted all funny? So the dimensions weren't set right. So there's all these little minute details that go into making sure that this gets pushed out in the most optimal way, and you haven't done that.
It's not what your job is.
Yeah. And like, what have we accomplished by doing all of this?
So when they posted this content, did they actually post the one that they made or the one that
Oh,
you
yeah.
made?
No, they asked me to post it. I posted the one
So
they
you
made.
did. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Did you post the one that they made?
Yeah, because it's soul crushing, and my soul is crushed. Because it's like I don't care I don't care anymore. If you want me to come up with something and put my time into it, and I put my time into it, and you don't appreciate the time it took me or the years it took me to learn how to do that, and you want to put something out that looks like doo-doo, then at that point I'm just like, I'm too old at this point to give a shit enough to actually try to convince you otherwise, on something so minute, so minuscule of one day out of an entire year for a social media post.
Yeah, it was a very I get what you mean. It's not like they were printing it on binders and handing it out at conventions for the next year.
Yeah.
It's not like something that was super relevant piece of media.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, and especially on that day, if anybody's got their Instagram open that day, which people do.
Yeah, they're not gonna.
When you see like a business, you're not looking at business. You're scrolling right past that stuff.
It would have been better to post it on LinkedIn on Tuesday when everybody was back in the office. You would have gotten more of a
at least more impressions.
Yeah, and it's also, this goes into the whole social media stuff, is like, that's like a tiny little pebble throwing it into a giant lake. Like, if you want to make a ripple every single day, you got to throw a pebble all the time. You got to keep throwing that stuff out there. If we're just putting out one post, it takes us 2 days to get it ready, and you're putting it out for one day, and that's the only post you're going to do for the next 3 months.
2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, it's like such a waste of time.
It's like I told you last time, I've been really bad about social media lately. So I have no continuity to my schedule, which is not a healthy thing, which we're going to fix up. But when you were telling me this story, and then I inadvertently started telling you a different story as we sat down in here, and I had somewhat of this similar experience.
Yeah.
In this case, it's a very interesting line for me because they didn't come here for me to do the filming for them. They're doing the filming on their own. I'm providing the platform, the audio equipment, the lighting, the green screen, the resources of the room itself.
Yeah.
So my job as a admin tech on this is to make sure that my lighting is set up properly, that it looks good,
Yeah.
that it's nice and full, and everything is operating properly. Now, obviously, when you bring us in on lighting, you essentially, outside of like conventional style lighting that obviously lights up our faces here to make sure that we can be seen, they wanted some aesthetic lighting as well. Some
add like
ambiance.
character. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Ambiance.
So in this particular client, one of the reasons I think that they sought out our location is because they were currently doing a podcast, which I can't value whether it's successful or unsuccessful. They're already doing a podcast, so they're an established podcast, and they just wanted to change up the scene. They wanted to make it more visually attractive, So it's interesting. So that when they came through, they did some filming here. They're coming back again. It's going to be a recurring thing. I think they're doing their whole season with us. We created a product based off of what he told me as like the overall look of the scene itself. And we want to incorporate some of their corporate coloring into the walls, right? So that, it all kind of ties together. So at the end of the day, long story, not so short, they came in, they made it look great. We paved the lighting. Lighting looked awesome. They did the camera work. I saw the video content that they made. Really nice bokeh, really sharp looking, especially for...
Explain the bokeh to people.
All right, so what bokeh is, if for the non-video folks, is essentially it just adds dimension and a level of focus to the actual
foreground
screen
is like
itself, right?
focus, the background is blurred.
Correct. So if it was me and I had some objects behind me, like if I was sitting in the center over here, you would see me very clean and crisp and clear, great scope of focus, and then behind me on the objects, they would look, a little blurred or soft or distorted to a degree where you can see depth of field.
Because they don't matter.
Right.
They don't matter. The background is not the point. at all.
Right.
This isn't like a sham wow commercial.
Exactly.
There's nothing behind you that needs to be seen.
No, it's just nice to have some objects there. It helps soften the screen a little bit. It
Little
gives it a
mise en
different vibe, right? And it gives you depth of field. Like that's the big thing is depth of field. So this particular industry that they work in is very corporate. So the whole look was very clean and
Did they
crisp.
see the bokeh look when it was like while they were doing it?
No, because it was the one person that's doing the actual show, and then the crew that is doing the filming.
His crew.
Yes.
And did their crew did the bokeh?
Yes.
Okay.
So and he took that. So he's getting his own input from his boss that's telling him what the effect is, what they're trying to look, and then they're relaying that information to me, and then we're incorporating our two skill sets together.
Yeah.
In order to create this product. So essentially came out great. They sent me a sample. I watched the sample and I was like, wow, this looks really good. This is very visually stimulating for me as a layman that doesn't know anything about that industry. I'm not trying to appeal to other gray suits or whoever. I'm trying to, if you're putting stuff on social media, especially shorts or reels or whatever, you're trying to just attract a large group of people to watch your stuff and get brand recognition from that. And hopefully, potentially that leads to business for you down the road. They may not know that they need it right now, but when it does come time to be that, then they're like, oh, I see this guy all the time, whatever. So anyway, saw it, and they had some constructive criticism, not so much that had to do with what I did. I created exactly what was relayed to me. But for his team, he wanted some changes, and essentially what they recreated again was just a little bit of a variable of what they had already had for a series of episodes prior to that.
Yeah.
So sure, the location's a little different. The scenery is a little different, but instead of being editorial, it's more broadcast.
Yeah.
So difference between soft and very just clean, crisp line. And I think it's interesting because not just for me, and it's relative to me, but for this particular business, they hired this person to design that, to do exactly what you're doing in a different format of saying, hey, look, I'm gonna scope the landscape. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna do site visits. I'm gonna find the spot. We're gonna design the whole room based around the input that you've given me or context, and then we're gonna create this product. And you created all of those elements, and it looked awesome. Like really did. I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then you come back and you just take everything that you told that person and just sucked it all away. And you're back to square one.
That's
just a little bit different of a location.
It's just it's classic, and it happens so much. I listen to a ton of podcasts. I listen to like comedians and stuff, and time again, I've had these stories where people pitch a TV show, they sell a TV show, it's really, really funny, and then these suits come in, these producers come in, and they water it down. Oh, we need a kid in. Oh, don't curse so much. All this stuff. Water down, and then you get like a generic like all the stupid King of Queens type shows that are out there, the same one over and over and over again.
Romano and all those cats.
So it's this overarching idea or principle where people are coming into a situation, they want something creative, they want to make content, and then they're just kind of falling back on whatever they're feeling safe with.
Yeah.
And it's not only, forget the aesthetics, because it is, like I said before, it is subjective. Maybe brush script, maybe that'll turn heads. Maybe using papyrus on your next yoga flyer will really wow them. Probably won't. But whatever. Maybe you're putting drop shadow just so perfectly on that that next brochure that you're putting.
Don't mess with the drop shadow, bro.
Oh boy. Anyway. So aside from all that, aside from the subjective idea of what looks good and what isn't or doesn't, which, obviously I can't help it. I got better taste than a lot of the people out there. I'm going to be able to tell you what's trendy, what looks good, more so than, and I'll keep an open mind, but more often than not, please. Anyway, aside from all that, the time that you are wasting making something look not better. You are not going to go up to Steven Spielberg and be like, hey, I think for this shot, you're not going to do that. And am I comparing myself to Steven Spielberg? Of course I am. But my point is this, is that you're not going to come in to an environment and make it better in that sense. Maybe there's a couple slight changes. Oh, maybe I could do that. Yeah. But from a bottom line, what these corporate people need to really consider is the time they are wasting and the money they are wasting by thinking this shade of pink doesn't work. I need a different shade of pink. Like, they're not going to be able to have the eye or the understanding of what they're talking about and why what they want to do really doesn't add and may, in most cases, take away from what's happening.
Well, there's a and this is what I was trying to allude to before for the layman is that there's a science behind the oh my goodness, there's a science behind the mythology or the method.
Methodology?
Right? Methodology. That's the word I was looking for. Jesus, I said mythology. So what do we got? Like Greek gods coming here or what? So
we'll
there's
edit
science behind it, and that's what I was trying to elicit the response out of you from it. So we made it less being complaining than more being educational.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason why you hire people to do jobs, and do those pros not want insight from you? No, that's not the case. We have to understand the dynamic of what you're trying to create. But if you're going to take the time to hire us, and you've done your research and you've picked a particular company, whether it's a creative agency or a studio or whoever, to create a product for you, then there's also a reason why they're doing the things that they're doing in order to achieve those steps. So I can relate to that too. And then on the other side of the stick, I'm also paid to just
do.
Yeah.
Just do. That's what you want? Great.
That's it.
That's perfect. It's always good to have checkpoints, be able to check in with the client and be like, is this cool? It's also good. I mean, this relates more to web projects or graphic design stuff, to have a roadmap and be like, in 2 weeks, I'm going to show you a revision. You're going to, see two different versions of it. From those two versions, you're going to pick one of those things. And then we're going to come back in a week. I'm going to show you that one. And then you're going to have to make your final decision. If you don't make a final decision, then we're going to charge you more money. It always comes down to time or money. Like you have to kind of give an outline, or you're gonna like, it leads to a disaster if you don't have those rigid rails in place to show, to let them know, like, this is how it's going to be. Do you agree to this? Yes. Okay. This is what we're going to show you, and you have to agree to it. If you don't at this point, it's just going to cost more money. I've already got the deposit. If you don't want to work together, that's fine too.
I think when push comes to shove, I think the best advice that I can give in this scenario is when you hire a creative person to do it, in creative agency, and there's a reason why they created everything, launch the products that they're giving you and go back and analyze your metrics.
Yeah.
Because once you do that, then you have real numbers that come back and say, okay, maybe this didn't work because the color palette was wrong, or we find that this color palette in this post, as you're rolling out a whole campaign and you're doing different media pieces, you can come back and analyze those and say, okay, well, this brochure did better. Why? Why did it do better? Oh, well, it must be this design, shape, text, message, whatever we're putting out on it, image, and then you can derive a product. As the consumer, I feel like that's the way to approach it versus, just saying, oh, well, you know what? He designed something different than what I would have designed.
Yeah.
So
of course
I'm
he
just
did.
going to redesign what I want anyway.
What I'm used to. Well, I mean, there's other options too. You could do focus groups if you have the money for it. Or you could do A/B testing where you put them both out and see what people respond to more. Like you could do stuff like that. It costs more money, but then again, you're also wasting all this time, everyone's time doing this stuff. It's better. Like I always say, it's better to just put it out and then go on to the next thing and improve it the next time. Yeah. But I mean, the other thing too that really you got to realize is sometimes you're just not compatible. Sometimes a client and a service provider, they're just not meshing. I've worked with people and they didn't like what I was doing, and the next guy, they loved it. Like whatever he was doing was awesome. Was it different? Maybe. I mean, and it all comes down to taste and how you gel with people. So sometimes it might just be like a relationship thing where you guys just aren't seeing eye to eye,
Or your visions don't match.
I just want to get to a point, and I'm almost there, where you just tell people to go fuck right off if you don't want to work with them. You just be like, all right, you don't like this? Well, you could take it and fuck off out the door. And I've gotten to that point with a lot of the projects I was doing where I'm just like, I'm not getting paid enough. This work is stressful and it's stupid and you're not listening. And it's really funny when you try to break up with a client and like they don't want you to go and you're just like, I don't want to. I've had conversations, and it's funny because I still, one of these cases in particular, I still have them as a client. They're just paying me more and I'm doing less work. And I just told them, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm like, I don't want to do this. And I don't like how this is set up. And you guys don't need me to do this. You could find somebody else to do this. Go and find somebody else to do this. And they were really, really, really sad about that. Yeah. And it's kind of difficult sometimes to have those conversations.
But did you have conversations with them going down the road of being like, where you've like made specific things for them and they just didn't do what you advised them to do?
They had, in this one particular case, it was for a website, and it was, you know, I build primarily all of my sites on WordPress just because it's simpler for me to do it. And what I tell clients is that the beauty of WordPress is there's thousands and thousands and thousands of developers and designers out there that work on WordPress. You know, you're going to be able to find somebody that could go into what I did, understand it, and edit it because they know WordPress as well as I know WordPress. And that, you know, in the long run, that's beneficial to both parties. In this case, I was working on a site that was built just kind of HTML, PHP, CSS, JavaScript, like all the things that WordPress are made up of, but it was just all the raw files where I had to go in and edit the individual files as opposed to going into like the WordPress dashboard and fixing stuff. So I was having to do all these little things that they wanted. And I finally told them, I'm like, look, you need somebody to just take this site and put it in WordPress. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. Editing HTML files is like so, 2006 that I can't do this anymore. And then they actually, without me trying, I built them a WordPress site. I took their site and I turned it into a WordPress site. And now, they pay me hourly to do any changes, and most of the stuff they could just do themselves.
But WordPress is like I think like the platform for a professional website.
Well,
like
yeah,
that's where you want to be at.
Well, yeah, if you could go Squarespace, you could go WordPress. There's other different things you could do. If you want something that is going to be custom to fit what your needs are, and you don't want to have to spend too much time on it, then
WordPress.
Yeah, in my opinion, that's what you should do.
It's like picking between PC and Apple.
Yeah. So a Squarespace is more for a simpler site where it's not database driven, where you got to add, and you're going to take care of it yourself. You're going to add stuff, and if you like to futz around, then please use Squarespace. I tell people that now. I used to be really against it, and then I was just like, I don't care if you want to do this site yourself. Please be my guest. Go use Squarespace. Please do it. And as far as the WordPress stuff goes, I don't recommend people buying themes off the shelf. The way I do stuff is like I custom code a WordPress theme from the ground up to fit your needs and to make it specific for your company. There are themes out there that work really well, but sometimes people will spend $60 to $120 and buy a theme off a theme forest, and you see the demo and it looks so cool, and then you get it and it's these confusing instructions and all the pictures aren't there anymore, and you're like, why doesn't my site look like that site? So, in those cases, it kind of, in those cases, it does get a little kind of tricky.
Hire somebody to do it. When I had my website built, the developer said, here's a thing of themes.
Yeah.
Pick one. They charged me. I paid for the theme, obviously.
Yeah.
And then they coded my website from that, because it's not just like drag and drop.
Yeah. There are situations now. There's like the Divi theme that is a little more drag and drop. It is kind of intuitive and a little, quote unquote, fun to use. There is a learning curve to it. But I think that's what comes down to with all the stuff we're talking about, is that there's this learning curve where somebody the other day wanted me to find a list of all the marijuana dispensaries in New Jersey. So what did I do? Do I want to go onto Google and like marijuana dispensary and then scroll around and go? No, I paid somebody $25 to
Yeah,
do
you were
it.
telling it. I think we talked about this.
Well, I probably talked about it before because I've done this before, but the other day I did it and I just paid somebody $25 to do it for me because I don't want to do it. And that's how I think clients should look at this stuff is like, I don't want to have to think about this stuff. This is what I want to do. I want to sell my product and make money.
It's 100% me.
You know, but this is the ongoing, you know, issue you have with doing creative work is that it's creative. You're pulling it out of thin air. Whereas if you're a plumber or an accountant, it's very like physical, like it's very like tangible.
Yeah.
Like you can't do it. Like I can't, you know, go into a, you know, I can't be a heart surgeon. I can't just go in there and be like, I got this. You're not doing it right. I got this. I can't do that because I'm not trained. But if I want to pick the right color blue and the client's like, I don't like that blue, I'm going to take over. I'm going to pick the blue. It's a lot more accessible. But, you know, at that point, it's like, well, why did you hire me in the first place, you know?
So the moral of the story, the tasty nugget.
The tasty nugget.
Is hire your pros, trust your pros, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And let it fly.
Yeah. Understand the value of your time. Understand the value of their time. Understand the value of your money.
And their expertise.
Yeah. And it's not to say, you know, it's not to, like, I don't want this to come across as like an F
we don't
you
listen to you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's more of like have an open communication and
Correct.
understand, you know, why certain things were done. Why was that font used? Or what do you guys think of this? You know,
There's a methodology behind it.
Yeah. There's a mythology behind it that involves a lot of.
Apollo will come down.
It's like, you know, and it gets into a thing where, you know, I'm sure you've dealt with this where clients.
Don't make me.
I'm sure you've gotten to this thing with clients where they go out and ask a bunch of different people. They ask their mom and they ask their neighbor and they ask their office mate and they ask 20 different people, what do you think? And then you get all these random responses back, and then that person takes the design you did and then comes back to you and says, look, we got to put it sideways with polka dots because blah 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So there's like a, you know, there's a certain balance to just getting it done. I can't stress this enough. Make it look good fast because we don't have time for the bullshit. You have to pump out so much stuff these days, you know?
Talking about like in a social format, right?
I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about everything. Unless you're making a movie, if you're making, say, in your case, say like a music video, I think in that case you could sit there, you could watch it, you could plan it all out ahead of time. You could kind of like say, all right, these are the kind of shots we want to do. You could kind of get a consensus and then go, and then you can edit it. You could edit certain things. You could do certain things, and that should take a long time. If you're shooting a podcast, podcasts are timely things. I think you know it's okay if you're banking a little bit, but also at the same time you want to put this stuff out really fast. How many views do you think this guy's going to get? Like how many? Do you know what his metrics are for the podcast he's put out before?
I haven't really looked much at his profile.
I'm sure. How long has he been doing it for?
Probably a year, I would say.
For a year, and it's
based
like
off the amount of episodes.
It's like a professional. It's a very niche kind of business.
It is. It's very niche financial.
Oh, okay. So it's
doing financials. I'm not gonna get crazy.
Yeah. I'm sure his numbers are okay if he's just been doing it for a year. If he's local,
I can tell that his YouTube channel's got like a couple hundred subscribers, but the interactions on his videos are minimal.
Yeah. So, you know, he should really kind of start thinking about that kind of stuff. He should be looking at his analytics, and he's got to be pumping this stuff out.
They do. They have a good social program. Like
that's great.
Since they became like a client here, I've followed them on their platforms. So I'm seeing their content that's going out, and they are, you know, consistent with their posts.
That's great.
And how they do it, and you know, it's been, you know, thought out. It's got captions and, you know, all the things that you need to have a really impactful social media post. But I think in that particular case, you know, like you did a year, you've got the metrics behind it. You know, if you want to increase the metrics by trying to present the information differently or give a different look or feel to what you're doing or add a little more content or whatever that fact may be, is that when you create a job specifically for that, you need to be able to, again, contribute meaningfully as the client, but really, let the product happen and then analyze your metrics.
Yeah.
And then in 5-10 episodes, you don't see a change, then you can say, okay, let's go back to this. But this only brought you that far to begin with. So it's kind of like psychotic to just keep doing that same thing over and over and over again. Do something.
Yeah.
You're not going to lose people.
No. But you're not gonna, it's I don't know. It really comes down to, and I'm not trying to beat up on the client.
No.
I'm just saying that,
Did.
yeah, but we definitely did. It really just comes down to being able to communicate, and maybe the client. This is what you should do. If you're the client and you're not sure about something, maybe ask the person that's working on it, why did you do that? To understand where they're coming from. And maybe on the flip side of that, if the client doesn't like something or they want something changed to something specific, and be like, okay, well, we're trying to do something different. May I ask you why you wanted to do this? Or, maybe pointing out to the client, hey, this brush script, it's kind of like cheesy and generic. Could we freshen this up a little bit? Or you could be more like me, like when I'm the client and somebody gets something done, I'm like, great, it's done. Awesome.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah.
Does it look stupid? No. Is it clear and concise? Is the information there and it's done? And it took 2 hours to do and I got it the same day? Okay, great. That's awesome. I can move on with my life now. Mm-hmm. I don't want to spend an extra day trying to do this stuff.
Move on to the next one.
Yeah.
I agree.
So that's the end of our tasty nugget rant.
It was good though.
I hope so. I mean, I don't know. I just don't really want to come across as negative Nancy or complain about stuff. I'm just trying to get maybe in my brain a better understanding, maybe just trying to get my thoughts across to understand them better as far as
That's the premise behind this was, okay, so we all said what we had to say, but ultimately, incorporated into this episode is the opportunity to say, hey, look, like you said, open avenues of communication, trust in your pros, give your insight, trial and error, try it out.
Yeah.
Just put it out and move on. But you can't, I think it is frustrating as a pro to be handcuffed into something that doesn't work. It was the same thing, like I said, of emulating the same product.
Yeah.
Same thing for you, emulating the same product.
So unmotivating.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you pay us and we'll do whatever you want.
You're just going to pay more to do whatever you want us to do, especially if it takes us more time. It's going to cost more.
The second time around.
Yeah, exactly.
You realize that you fucked up.
All right, tasty nuggets.
All right.
All right.
I smoke rocks.